I've had the Universal Audio Dream 65 pedal for almost a year now, and I have put a ton of time and effort into figuring it out, getting used to it, getting acquainted with it, and working it into my music on stage and at home. Now, I use modelers a lot, and I love tube amps. This thing, it just has a very special place in between these two extremes. This is actually not a good modeler. And what I mean is that it's kind of a problematic tool for modeling guys. But I think it's the perfect modeler for tube amp guys who hate modelers. Let's unpack both of those statements and why I think they're true. First, let's talk about why the Universal Audio Dream pedal is perfect for tube amp guys. Number one, the sound. If you want it to sound like the real thing, you'll like it. It's actually purported to be the most realistic model of a 1965 Fender Deluxe Reverb. And that might be true. They intentionally designed this thing to be a warts and all replication of what that amp would sound like and feel like. So in addition to the tone, you'll get some of the burps and gurgles that you would experience on a real tube amp. And it's not just the amp either. The reverb and the tremolo, they sound fantastic. I love them. It's actually the only digital recreation of a spring reverb that I even like at all. And these have real speaker emulations, just like on the Universal Audio aux box. Almost none of the current modelers have an actual model of a speaker. They usually have some version of an impulse response. And it's linear, so it's just gonna put an EQ on the signal regardless of what that signal is. But they're not gonna really do a lot of the things that a speaker in a cabinet would do under certain circumstances. But one thing about realistic speaker emulations, they cut both ways. And we'll talk about how that can be a bad thing in a minute. The second reason why tube amp guys will love the Universal Audio Dream 65 pedal. If you like turning knobs, you're going to enjoy this. The knobs even feel good, if that makes sense. The build quality on these pedals is amazing. One benefit of having a great set of knobs is you can just look down and get a snapshot in your mind of exactly what you're working with regarding your tone stack and your gain staging. I actually think using this kind of interface is better for developing an intuition for amp sounds. Modern modelers almost always have so many features, it's impossible to dedicate knobs to anything in particular. It's all fine when you're geeking out at your desk and engineering your tones and your presets. Once you get on the stage and once you start playing, you kind of have a black box in front of you and you're just hoping that you programmed it right. Also, the complicated modelers are very useful and versatile. That can limit you. You can just get lost in the options. Which brings me to the third reason why the Universal Audio Dream pedal is the perfect modeler for tube amp guys, which is the simplicity. You just plug it in and go. Yeah, it only does the one thing, but because it only does the one thing, there's nothing to think about except the music. And you can plug it into anything. You can plug it into a powered PA speaker, a full-range flat response cabinet. You can plug it into the receive of an effects loop of another amp to basically use the power section of that amp with this as the preamp section. And you could even just plug it into the front of any amp. It's gonna sound great no matter what you do. Mine was actually a gift from a close friend who had one as well, and he plugs it into the front of his vintage Super Reverb. And it sounds amazing. He doesn't have to dime his amp and blow out his eardrums to get a little breakup. You wanna know my favorite thing to do with the UA Dream pedal? I like to go into my garage and I will just go all the way back in a reclining chair and I'll snuggle up next to a guitar and I'll put this right on the armrest plugged into whatever amp is in arm's reach and I will just decompress and let the music come out of me. It is a legitimate soul-searching exercise for me. You ever lay on the couch with your HELIX or your quad cortex and just turn your brain off and enjoy? Probably not, right? The bottom line about the modelers is that for a lot of people, using them feels like work. Usually your experience of a modeling rig is a matter of mathematics. You can't really explore by feel. There can even feel like there's a layer of separation between you and the sound. It's almost like the difference between seeing the ocean through your window and seeing the ocean on your television. So when I was an electrician, I would have to train apprentices. And I had this one guy I was training. We were doing a high-end kitchen and we were installing these really expensive pendant lights with these very delicate looking glass globes. And I'm opening up these lights and I'm thinking, oh man, I just know this guy is going to want to just pick up this stuff and play with it, and I don't want him to break it. So I'm opening the box, and I just say out loud, okay, we're going to set these glass globes over here and not touch them so that they don't break. The moment that I set the globe down, saying that, he just grabs it, picks it up, flips it around, knocks on it, and I was trying not to get mad, and I remembered something I learned in college right around that time about different learning styles people have, and I said, oh, you know, I think you're a kinesthetic learner. And he was like, oh yeah, what is that? And I was like, well, that means you learn by touching things and feeling them. And he just started cracking up. And he said, Billy, is that your nice way of saying to put that the heck down? It was. Tube amps are like that. You want to get your fingers on the knobs, and the Dream 65 pedal's like that. Now let's talk about why the Dream 65 pedal is a problematic tool for modeler guys. The funny thing is that the Dream 65 models a Fender Deluxe Reverb really well. So it's like, if it models good, why isn't it a good modeler? First, the sound. Let's talk about sounding real versus sounding good. In your mind, think about your favorite guitar tone ever. Where did you hear that tone? On a record, probably? Has it ever occurred to you that amp in the room actually sounds pretty rough? That's why tube amp guys hate modelers, because they're accustomed to hearing all this roughness and all these weird sounds, and when they don't hear it, it doesn't feel real to them, because the modelers are a little less rough. There is a reason record producers treat guitar amp tracks with all kinds of mastering effects in post. It's actually better to smooth out all that roughness and get a sound that sounds nicer. These days, the quality modelers actually sound better than the amps do in the room because they're not as rough. That is, they sound better to everyone except the guitar player. I found that out when I tried to push the Dream 65 pedal as hard as I push the models that are in the HX Stomp. It starts to sound like wet farts. Do you want to know why? Realistic speaker emulation, like we talked about. Speakers don't have infinite clean headroom. Sometimes modeling guys, we push the amp models way further than the analog gear ever could have gone, and we like that. This was a serious problem for me when I tried to use the Dream 65 pedal to actually make music for people other than myself. I never had that problem with any of the Line 6 cab models because you can't distort them. They do have infinite clean headroom. They're less dynamic than the universal audio speaker emulations, but one side effect of that is that they always sound good. When it was all said and done, 5 out of the 6 speaker emulations that Universal Audio makes available on this pedal are not useful to me in making music for other people. Only 1 of them was even usable. No, I still use the other 5 when I'm sprawled out on the couch exploring my soul. I guess it depends on what you want this to be for. I think a lot of modeler guys will look at something like this and say, you know, it's fantastic to be so realistic, but at the end of the day, I need something that's useful. I need to be able to get more good sounds that are actually useful for making music for other people without a bunch of burps and gurgles and fizzy sounds and crackles that the tube amp would have made just for the sake of authenticity. The other reason that modeling guys might not like the UA Dream pedal is because it lacks all the basic features that we're accustomed to having on these modeling devices. There's no way to send your audio to a computer. There's no editor. You can't get under the hood to look at what's going on. Even on the mobile app, there's no way to see the parameters that you saved when you save a preset. You just have to remember what you did based on the title of the preset, if you even gave it a title. And the Bluetooth connection is so janky that the app wouldn't even help you if it was any good. You can't even plug headphones into this thing. Do you know how frustrating it is for modeling guys to not have these features? These are thought of as fundamental elements of modeling equipment at this point. The fact is that even though this product does produce a great digital model of an amp, this is just not an equivalent tool to what we normally call a modeler. If you wanted to use this as your modeler, you would only be able to make it work if you paired it with a modeler. It's kind of expensive to be so limited. Paying $400 MSRP just to have to buy another $400 something to be able to use it, it's tough to swallow. That being said, if you are a modeler guy, you should get one of these things. It would be good for you to turn your modeler off and connect with your guitar with a piece of equipment that's a little more visceral, especially if you don't have a tube amp or if you can't use your tube amp very much. I want you to feel the inner peace that comes from turning the knobs. And And if you're a tube amp guy, well, then you should definitely get one of these things. You will feel right at home. It'll give you a way to play without having stage volume. It'll give you another color of paint to play with when you're experimenting with your amps. And it fits on the arm of your chair so much better than your amp head, seriously. If you want to go more in depth on how this stacks up against a real modeler, I did a nice video comparing it with the HX Stomp. You should check that out if you want more information. That's right here. Or if you want to hear exactly how I worked the Dream 65 into my church worship rig, click here.